Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the much anticipated new album from Kacey Musgraves titled Pageant Material. Back when I heard Same Trailer, Different Park for the first time in 2013, the major label debut album from Kacey Musgraves, I was blown out of the water. I mean, here was a woman whose love and knowledge are old school classic country allowed her to load up her songs with grounded, more honest maturity and progressive tendencies that were anathema to country radio, even nowadays. Coupled with just being a damn great songwriter in her own right, both in terms of technical craftsmanship and then really selling it with a lot of real emotive presence, she won the hearts of a ton of critics, myself included. She was number 3 on my list of the best albums of 2013, bar none, and she scooped up some well-deserved Grammys in one of the few examples of that show actually getting it right for a change. And yet, despite great sales and crave critical reviews, Kacey Musgraves is not really a radio star. In an era screaming out for more women in country music, Kacey's lack of mainstream success frustrated a lot of people, including some of the critics who actually ended up supporting her. Now, they could easily point the finger at the fact that her brand of country music isn't exactly the type that gets a lot of airplay, especially considering the consolidation of regional country radio places more of it in the hands of petulant assholes like Bobby Bones, who Kacey Musgraves refused to give the time of day, and unfortunately kind of paid the price for it. Can't blame her though. But then a lot of these critics decided to go a little deeper. They wanted the tone and the writing and the instrumentation to be a little bit more modern or strident, or at the very least less girlish and presumably immature because of it. In short, they wanted Kacey Musgraves to be country music's new feminist progressive savior or something in the vein of a Beyonce. Be more transformative or drive away some of the analysts who don't know the difference between correlation and causation and say that women are the tomatoes in country music salad or some asinine bullshit like that. But from the beginning, I've never bought that was what Kacey Musgraves wanted for her career, and I'd argue that such aspirations took away from the greatest part of her appeal: her populism. I mean, sure, she loved decidedly uncool classic country, but her writing style and content was always very grounded in the fact that she was part of the same crushing system as her audience, that she didn't really have solid answers. Not trying to lead a revolution against it. Her material could be girlish in tone and writing, but it only emphasized by contrast the wisdom she had beyond her years, and disguised how deeply her words could cut in the United States, where a song like Girl Crush by Little Big Town was nearly forced off the radio because it supposedly promoted a lesbian relationship or some nonsense. And by framing her material as more matter-of-fact and just kind of acceptable, I'd argue that it was a lot more effective and it worked in a subtler way than any amount of incendiary fire spitting would. Yeah, anthems are nice, but they need humanity and nuance to have real lasting punch to them in the long term. So when I heard that Kacey Musgraves' newest album would be called Pageant Material, I was really excited. I mean, taking her brand of progressive views to traditional southern views of femininity might require she play things a little bit more subtlety between the lines, but that didn't mean the punch wouldn't be there. It'd be just as harsh, or at least I hope that was the case. Was I right? Well, okay, I want to stress that yes, while Pageant Material is, in my opinion, a slightly weaker record than Same Trailer, Different Park was, it's still damn good. It's just not at the same near classic level, and I can easily tell you why. And the crazy thing is that I can totally see why some people will absolutely adore this album, even more than the last one. And that's because Kacey Musgraves is still obscenely talented as a composer, singer, and lyricist. It's just that the subject matter that she chose and her method of presenting most of it isn't quite as interesting or gripping, at least to me. I still respect the hell out of her as an artist, and there's still songs on the record that I reckon are near some of her best, just not the album as a whole. Great record, but it's not going to make my top 10 anytime soon. So okay, where did things slip up? Well, to start, we need to consider Kacey Musgraves herself. Now, many critics have already drawn the comparison between her work and that of more classic, smoother country in the 60s or the 70s, or maybe even some of the 80s. And with this record, she certainly proved she's got the voice for it, able to balance some theatricality and camp with down-home realism pretty effectively, with a thick dollop of sweetness to cut out any of the real biting sting of her words on the surface. Of course, until you start digging into them. Then again, provided there was any sting to begin with. We'll get to more of this in a minute, but the biggest change on this record in focus comes in the choice to pursue more of the relaxed, hazy sort of love songs that would be corny as hell if Kacey wasn't a performer who could sell them as genuine and real. There's an organic, expressive power to her vocals that plays at a bit of a subtler range than most belters, looking at you, Carrie Underwood, and yet she's got enough feistiness to back it up to prove that she's not exactly a cooing balladeer, and the instrumentation and production supports a lot of that change in tone, with thicker strings, steel guitars, and a denser backing mix adding a shimmering opulence opulence to many of these songs that the stripped-back, rickety nature of most of her previous record didn't exactly have. It's not that the grit and the texture isn't here. The banjos and the acoustic guitars have some great moments to ground some of the softer, more melodic and graceful instrumentation, but it's nowhere as prominent or gritty or as sharp-edged. And while the flightier nature of some of the songs on the same Trailer Different Part came in tracks that were so airy they felt insubstantial, songs like the languid whistles, strings and slow Spanish guitar flourishes of High Time, or the gentle acoustic moments of Late to the Party, or the aching slow grace of the waltz cadence of the steel guitars on Fine, they've got more density in the mix. If you close your eyes, you can easily imagine them being played maybe on a Broadway stage somewhere. Hell, most of this album has an odd sort of theatricality to it. From the strikingly on-the-nose and pretty hilarious title track that's got a pretty damn good drum timbre at the back of the mix, and a lot of traditional country rock to it that I loved. The soap opera whispers of This Town thanks to the lower guitar tones that were great. The broad, folksy nature of Biscuits, Family is Family, and Cup of Tea. You could easily construct a faux golden age musical tying some of these songs together, and I have no problem with that. I love musical theater. Now, granted, the greatest strength of Same Trailer Different Park is how goddamn real and gritty and grounded it felt and sounded. And to be fair, Kacey brought a fair chunk of that too. Then the slightly ragged strings and Somebody to Love, the frustrated melancholy of Miserable where you can hear every squealing pluck of the guitars, the great richer background strums that anchor the low end of Good Old Boys Club, and the surprisingly contemporary feel of Die Fun, where Kacey's shaky desperation in her delivery slips between the cracks of a song you think glorify living fast and hard and yet aches with a darker sadness that I honestly wish infused more of this record. That song could have gone darker if it played in more minor keys. Honestly wish it had. Hell, if all this album's a stage, the hidden track Are You Sure, a duet with Willie Nelson, reveals that stage as a shabby one in a small town bar, and the rougher tones of the instrumentation in the guitars and especially the solos definitely seals and really paints that picture and almost single-handedly gives this album some real dramatic pathos to it. But yet, that's subtext and not really supported by some of the text, and that's where we have to talk about the lyrics. And you all gotta be honest here, for what Kacey Musgraves is trying to do, I reckon she nailed it. She was aiming to write a lot more softer, more reserved material, more love songs in the vein of some of the classic country that she adores, and she nails this. In terms of her technical construction and flow, Kacey Musgraves has a way with meter and cadence that is exceptionally strong, and you can always count her material to have a richness in her detail and texture to show that it comes from a real place, a grounded place, comes from real experiences. Now sure, the title track isn't anything that John Oliver hasn't torn into with greater detail and nuance regarding the warped world of pageant culture, but Kacey just brings this exasperated flair to that song of having actually lived it that's almost screaming for a music video to have, say, child actors to star Melissa Peterman as one of the mothers. God, I'd want to see that. And even though I didn't really like the implication that everyone has at least tried to cheat on Biscuits, the song's so damn well written that I can't hate it. It's a lot of fun. The writing alone means that songs like Frustrations on Family is Family, the attempts to come back to their roots on Dime Store Cowgirl, or the gospy, tight-knit nature of This Town, they are redeemed in my eyes. And that's before you get to tracks like Somebody to Love, cutting into that double standard that we all hold for ourselves as cutting ourselves back and yet wanting more, and they ring as just so true and poignant. I really like that song. But here's the issue that I ultimately take with this album, and the reason why Same Trailer Different Park hits me so much harder. It's that real sense of drama. If you go back to that last record, the reason why even the lighter tracks like, say, Follow Your Arrow hit home is because they were just flipping off an establishment in country music that had every reason to come down on her for some of the subject matter she had. There was a sense of recklessness packaged with enough poise to just slip past some of the censors, or subject matter that was so real and desperate that even when presented with a smile, it was a weary, hopeless smile filled with a lot of resignation. They don't really have a way out. This album doesn't really go for that territory, and while it might go down easier with a lot of audiences, there isn't really enough subtext to add a kick to this. And in some cases, I was just waiting for that moment where songs like This Town revealed how small town camaraderie revealed its darker edge and, say, bigotry or hostility towards outsiders, or a song like Fine shows how the guy that Kacey's waiting for isn't coming back because he's cheating or just gone, or maybe he's dead overseas. And yet, those moments didn't really come, and I'm left feeling that she might be playing these songs just playing them straight. The subtext might encapsulate some of it, sure, but the text doesn't really back it up. And yeah, that can be fine. There's not a bad song on this album for what she's trying to do, and there's a sincerity behind them that sells the performances really well. But when you place them in contrast to the moments with real drama on this album, like the title track, or Miserable, the subtext of Die Fun, or even the anger against the entrenched system on Good Old Boys Club with a none too subtle barb thrown a big machine, definitely a song I can appreciate for its lyrical subject matter right about now, they don't have the same impact for me. They feel a little bit too placid and content, and that doesn't make for great drama. In short, the word that I get with this album most on Pageant material is comfortable. Now, I mean, you could argue it was a risk for Kacey to go in this direction instrumentally towards more classic country. I wouldn't buy that, but you could argue it. But the songwriting takes less chances. And yet I can't say the songs that she did write are bad by any stretch of the mind from a compositional, songwriter, or performance standpoint. A little bit corny, sure, but I can tolerate that. I like classic country. I guess for me, love songs hit a little bit harder when I feel there's more at stake behind them. And Placid Contentment doesn't really have the same punch for me. Hell, if she had more songs that went in the more politicized direction of pageant material that gave her the excuse to add a little bit more bite to tracks with more opulent production, I would have cheered. This probably could have been one of my favorite albums of the year. But this, while it is still damn great and definitely recommended, I guess I held Kacey to a little bit higher standards, and it's not quite as powerful as her first album, and it's getting a light 8 out of 10 from me. Definitely recommended, definitely worth your time, especially if you're looking for more of the softer side from Kacey Musgraves. If you wanted that, you'll get it. And if this is the direction that Kacey wants to follow her era, all the more power to her. I just wish there was a little bit more smoke and grit hidden behind that pageant, hidden behind the crown. Just saying. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Just keep reminding you all, on July 10th, I'm going to be reviewing an album from 2014 that you suggest. So leave your comments below asking whether or not what album from 2014 you want me to cover, whether or not it's an album I've already reviewed or something that I might have missed throughout the course of the year. The one that gets the most votes is going to be the one that I cover, and right now they got one pretty heavily out front, so it's got a lot of catching up to do if you want something new. Also, if you're going to spam my comments, I will be tracking, just letting you know there. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.